Sorry about that. I had no mic on, so we're going to try that all again. Thank you, Liz. Welcome to the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting of June 8th, 2026. This evening's meeting, as I just mentioned, is a committee of the whole meeting. What you can expect this evening is rather a lot of discussion on a variety of topics, most of which will be coming to the Board of Education for a vote at a subsequent meeting. We'll have a lot of discussion. If you're interested in details, you've come to the right place. If you're looking for votes, that's not going to happen tonight. That will happen at our meeting next week, at our general meeting, or it's called a general meeting, a regular meeting, or a voting meeting. So you can look for that next week. One of the characteristics that we teach to our kids all the way through, from preschool through our post-high school folks, is that of respect. This Board of Education takes that very seriously, and you have our commitment that we will treat one another and everyone who comes before the board this evening with respect, and we ask that everyone else do the same. Let's see here. We're going to jump right into our meeting this evening. Our agenda can be found, if you're present with us, it can be found just outside the room to my left on a table. If you're watching from home and you'd like a copy of our agenda, you can find it on our website, which is livoniapublicschools.org. If you hover over the board tab, you can drop down to board meeting information, and there you can find our agendas and you can follow right along. If you're interested, you can also find in that same board tab videos of previous board meetings if you are interested in that kind of thing. Let's see here. Next item on our agenda is audience communications. I don't have any blue slips. Is there anyone in the audience this evening who would like to present to the board? Seeing none. All righty, other than a few friendly faces over there. Next item on our agenda is our item number 2, Committee of the Whole, and 2A is the recommended Board of Education meeting schedule. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Oquist.
Thank you so much, President Burton. We are going to take a quick look at the updated meeting schedule. We're going to take a quick look at the updated meeting schedule for this coming school year. So we discussed this originally at the study session. What I am bringing back to you and to the board is an updated list of dates. So I'd like to just make note of a couple of pieces and make sure that they work for our entire board. The first one is on July 13th, that was initially listed as a closed session meeting. And while the board will be going into closed session, the board will be in open session for the selection of superintendent candidates. So President Burton and I changed that to a special meeting. So there will be a period of time when the board is in closed session, but you will start and end in open session. All of the dates for the superintendent search timeline are on here. And then we will start our normal meeting schedule in August with a committee and a regular meeting. And then we move on through each month, start with our study session, move to the committee meeting, and then the regular board meeting. We were also able to secure 2 dates for board workshops. One is Monday, October 26th, and the other is Monday, March 1st. So we have one in the first semester, one in the second semester. And this carries us through until June 14th, 2027. There is one Tuesday on here. It is the day after Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday on Monday the 18th, so our meeting will be moved to Tuesday the 19th. Other than that, our meetings will be held on Mondays, including those that are involved during the superintendent search process.
Thank you.
If there are any dates that you see right now that we need modified, please just let me know and we will absolutely do that.
Mrs. Bradford.
Thank you. I just do want to note, we did change the time for the Committee of the Whole meetings.
Thank you. Yes, we now meet, we will be meeting at 5:30 for study sessions, which will be the same as this year. We're going to move committee meetings to 6 p.m. instead of a 6:30 start. So that will begin with this calendar. And then our regular meetings will stay at 6:30. Thank you, Mrs. Bradford.
Anything else? Mrs. Frank.
So when we originally talked those special meetings in July,
Right.
it is on.
She is
We're at 6 with the schedule that we had was, the roundtable was at 6, and these are at 5:30, which is fine either way. I just didn't know what we're.
okay.
Do we want to do 6?
That's totally up to you. We will
Right,
note
I'm
the
fine
time.
either way, whatever.
I
There's
will-
just a discrepancy, so I just
Yep,
wanted to know what.
thank you for bringing that to my attention. I will double check with our folks from MLI and make
Okay.
certain that we're all on the same page, and I will confirm that out to everybody else.
Perfect.
We'll also change that on our schedule if need be.
Okay.
We'll leave it at 5:30 right now, and if it needs to change to 6 o'clock, we'll bring it to everyone's attention, but I will
Okay.
let the board know for sure, one way or
Okay.
the other. Hang on a second, let me make a note of that.
Thank you for noting that.
Also, I believe that our meetings are on Monday nights, but there are a couple during the superintendent search process that are going to be on other days of the week. The July 22nd will be a Wednesday, and then July 30th will be a Thursday. Those are, the board is already aware of that, but if anyone is following along from home, just to know that. I think that's it for the calendar. Anybody have anything else? Mr. Johnson, anything or?
I'm sorry, I'm just looking at what you said. July 22nd is a
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. So the 27th would be
A Monday.
the
Monday.
Monday and then the Thursday. Okay, all right, now
And
I've got
Thursday.
it, thank you.
So we're pretty tight in there for July, but then.
Why don't we make the change? I will ask Mrs. Junta to add Wednesday in front of July 22nd
Thank you.
and Thursday in front of July 30th, because
Yep.
it does say at the top, meetings scheduled on Mondays except where noted.
Okay. Yep, that would be
Since
great.
that isn't noted, I think it's important that we do that.
Yep, that would be fabulous. Thank you. I didn't even notice that. Mine did, oh, I see. It's up at the top. It says Mondays except where noted. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Anything else on the calendar? All right, we do have to vote on the calendar. The only portion that we're really voting on truly is the regular board meeting schedule, but we publish the whole thing all together for
Yes.
convenience, so. All
If
right.
you are ready, we are ready to put that on for next week.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Let's get
Sounds
that taken
good.
care of. The next item on the agenda tonight is item 2B, board update on the superintendent search. We intend on updating the public at each one of our meetings with where we are in the superintendent search process. Some of those weeks are going to be a lot of action. Some of those weeks are going to be a lot of waiting for the next step. So right now, we're kind of in that waiting stage. What we're doing right now, we have just completed last week the stakeholder surveys. So hopefully, if you were interested, you took the opportunity to participate in the stakeholder survey. They were a bit, it was very brief. But it was challenging because it was a matter of selecting the top 10 characteristics out of a list of about 25 or 30 characteristics, and every single one we would like to have in a superintendent. So, but that's good information for us to have as board members to see where our stakeholders' opinions fall on that topic. It will help us to create the profile appropriately. Right now, so we are MLI is processing that information from those surveys and the information from the open meetings that were held for our stakeholder groups last week. Again, hopefully, if you wanted to, you took advantage of that when they were held last Tuesday. Our next step at this point, on June 22nd, we'll be finalizing the position announcement, and the position will be posted June 24th through July 8th. So those are the immediate next steps coming up. That's it on the superintendent search. Do any board members have any questions on that at this time? No? All righty. I will turn it over at this point to Mr. Johnson with item 3 for the Operations Committee.
Thank you, President Burton. We do have 4 items on the agenda tonight, and to help us, we have Mr. Green. And the first is 3A, purchase of food service alarms.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Before we start tonight, I wanted to thank Ms. Sutton and our department as we conclude this school year for all her work this year, helping us to organize our many items that come before you from our department. She works diligently each week to get the information needed that hopefully has made your packets this year visible, transparent, and complete. I also want to thank Mr. Francis over there for his help as I transitioned into this role this year. Phil's been quite helpful in building my background, Having amazing files and historical information has always been willing to help when needed. On a side note, I did ask Mr. Francis for nostalgia reasons if he wanted to come up here and present for me this evening. He said, I'm good. But I just wanted to have a couple shout outs there. All right, first item, thank you. Purchase of food service freezer alarm. I'd like to thank Pat and our food and nutrition service supervisor for her immense homework on this topic and working with our IT department, our finance department, and our operations department prior to moving forward with this request. You may not know this, but we currently have 126 pieces of refrigeration equipment across the district, including freezers, coolers, and milk coolers, which support our expanded capacity, obviously, to store and serve significantly more food than in the past. As you know, this increase is driven in part by universal breakfast and meal service through the Michigan Meals Program. Maintaining, according to Pat, interesting in my homework with her, maintaining safe temperature ranges of 37 to 41 degrees Fahrenheit is critical as our volumes grow. So this initiative really does represent the next step following the completion of our kitchen upgrades as part of the 2021 bond work. For example, if a unit fails and temperatures move out of the safe zone, the system that we're asking the board to review and then go next week for purchase is designed to provide alerts after 3 consecutive readings, with parameters that can be customized to our needs. So we can set those ranges, and we would get notifications if after three readings. They're set for 3 because it helps prevent false alarms. Sometimes these refrigeration systems go into fluctuations due to normal defrost cycles, so that's why we have these 3 ranges. We do have generators that help with this when there's a power outage, but these are really not for power outages. These are for mechanical failures. So these scenarios are most often tied to those instead of a generator need. And really, it includes more than just those walk-in amazing freezers that you've seen on your bond walks. So after, as you'll see in the packet tonight, after these one-time costs, the annual service fee is $6,900, which includes a 1-year warranty and established service contracts for rapid response. So they'll come out to the site and help service the equipment. As I said, we worked with Ms. Smith in the finance department to make sure we had the budget for this, and Mr. Clan in the ID department to make sure the technology integration would be successful. Currently and in the future, if this was to happen, in case you said, so what happens if a freezer or cooler or a milk cooler goes down? What do we do in LPS currently? What do we do in the future? Well, we would have the ability, obviously, to off-site store any food at our various locations, including our warehouse. You may or may not know we have quite a few areas in our warehouse where we can store food, refrigerate our food, and freeze our food. So in the event of equipment failure, food service has contingency plans. This system also, I did not know, this integrates with Smart Systems, which is our company that helps us with chemical management and staff training in our food service department. Pat has reached out to several districts, including Plymouth Canton, who has used this vendor, and they have seen just an amazing amount of success with the implementation of these alarms. So we'd ask you to review this packet and have it be placed on next week's agenda for approval.
Questions? Mrs. Frank?
That was a phenomenal explanation because
Pat took me to school,
that was
and
fantastic.
we did a lot of homework
I
together.
think we all learned a lot about it, so thank you.
President Burton?
Just a double checking, are we installing or are they installing? 'Cause
They
it looked
come
like
in, they install.
they're installing, okay, there was a handwritten note on one of one of those, and I read it twice and thought, not positive which way this is
Yeah,
going,
they
so.
install, our maintenance department, Mr. Roberts and Mr. Lau were involved in those meetings as well, so they could make sure it was the right kind of area to put the gauge, and they've been doing this for a while, the company, so they're partners in this though, so
Okay,
they'll be on site when this happens, just like no different than when Mr. Clan's on site when there's IT installations.
okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I have one or two, Mr. Green. So the process would be, if it shows 3 times, somebody gets notified.
Yes.
It's either, by your memo, it's either text, phone, and then, once we're notified, do they automatically come out and respond to that?
They'll come out for the repair, but it will be our responsibility and our staff's responsibility for the off-site storage of the food or items like that. So if, for example, one system failed, a milk cooler or some other freezer, And we would have, Pat would be on the permission list, myself, Mr. Clan. We're still working through all the different people on that list, but then we would send someone out to move that food.
Okay. But this company would be responsible then for coming out and repairing whatever the problem is.
Correct.
You said we have, what was it, 126 units of some kind across the district?
Yep.
Historically, do we know what kind of failure rate we've ever had?
You know, I asked Pat that question, and I said, I'm going to ask you this question because I'm going to be asked this question. And she said that.
Well, you have it right on my notes to ask you that question.
What Pat said is, she asked us to think about this like the IT world. And that it's a layer of protection, because the last thing we want is to serve food
Right.
unbeknownst to us that something went down, and then we didn't know over the weekend, and then it comes back on, but that food item went out of range. And so it's really just the next generation of extra protection for the food that we're serving. It wasn't such a big need in the old days when we didn't have the volume of food, but with the volume of food, with the universal meals, it seems necessary. I do not have data on like a number of fails and how much it's happened, but I know, Allison, I think you've probably received some claims in the past for a few here and there, but I don't have a firm number.
So if it's off long enough, do we just sell the stuff as cottage cheese? Or?
Not here, we won't. Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
All right, well, that
Thank you.
answers my questions, thank you.
yep,
If nothing else, then this will go on for Monday's
please.
agenda, and then we'll move to item 2, the lease renewals.
Yes, as you know, each time at this part of the year, either in May or June, we present to you the 26, 27, or the future school year lease agreements. This year, we're presenting lease agreements for Little Tots at Cass, Himmerari Preschool at Nijiro, and Garfield Co-op Preschool at Garfield Community. The agreements for Bentley Field and John Stamolsky Veterans Park that you would see on your packet require additional time to finalize. So if those updates are not completed early this week, they'll be brought forward at a summer meeting as a special vote. But we anticipate those to be done this week. We really want to get those done. There was just a few little pieces on each of those leases that we needed our legal to look at. And so we anticipate those to be done this week. Following tonight's review of those leases, I will seek formal approval from all of you next week at the Board of Education meeting. Just like when Phil was in this role, upon board approval on the 15th, the finalized agreements will be executed electronically by the tenants as well as by the board president and board secretary. I just want to give you a few additional notes on these leases this year because they look a little different. Little Tots is entering, as you know, the final year of its current agreement at Cass. I've had conversations with them several times, and we've talked about that in study session. While Garfield Cooperative Preschool at Garfield Community and Himmerari Preschool at Nijiro are going to be operating under 11-month agreements this year. And that's due to both schools are going through bond-related renovations. And so we're starting those on August 1st. They won't have access to those premises. They do some work over the summer in July, typically, and that's why we write it up July 1 to June 30th. But this year, because those buildings will be, nobody's coming in those buildings in that window of time due to renovations, we have it as an 11-month release. So the only changes from last year for our other three are just the CPI increase that's written into the lease agreements, and that was at 2.3%, and that was year over year. Of February was the last reading we had on that. So that's what you'll see in the changes, and other than that, we're very happy to continue that the business with these three groups.
Great, any questions?
No.
The only question I had, Mr. Green, is, I mean, just looking at the numbers, the rent, there's cents involved.
Yes,
Does that come from the CPI?
yes.
Okay. Okay, that's what I sort of thought it was, because on most leases, you don't have a dot and 23 or 45 cents, so the CPI makes sense. I think we've done these on the consent agenda, if I recall correctly. Is
And I'll give
everybody
you an
good with-
update on the other two by midweek.
Okay.
Did you mention that Himmerari and Garfield are 11-month leases?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Is everybody good with consent?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then it'll take us to item 3C, the food service purchase.
Okay, Pat had me for another class on the annual food service contract that you have each and every year as part of your annual work that you do. So as you know, each and every year, the Food and Nutrition Service Department is responsible for ensuring that we have the right amounts of equipment and breakfast and lunch foods for next year for students across the district. So to support this work, the department partners with reliable vendors capable of supplying food products, dairy, snacks, prepared items, sanitation systems. That was new learning for me. I was thinking just food this is, but it's also the training, the maintenance support, and essential materials such as the compostable food trays are all part of this agreement. So using what Pat does is she uses food service data from this year, and she builds those recommendations for the following year. And in alignment with board expectations, she has a flow chart in some of the packets with some of her notes, including dairy costs, snacks, Domino's pizza days, very important days still in our schools. Smart systems, sanitation and training, some food that we get from the Livonia Italian Bakery, food trays, equipment repairs are all part of that package that you see. And so in that recommendation, it's recommended that the following vendors be approved to supply those items for the district's meal program. Van Arden out of Grand Rapids, Cedar Crest Dairy out of Hudsonville, AJ Pizza Domino's, Livonia Italian Bakery, and MMAS Solutions out of Canton. The why is the district has maintained strong, long-standing partnerships with these vendors, each of which has been reliable and high-quality service. They're also part of the food service agreement network that Pat does her homework on. And they have also, we're getting great feedback on our storage capacity. The trays have been, for some of our schools that are very big into Earth Day activities, they are very happy to hear that. And all these vendors meet the required nutritional standards as well. So we would ask you to review that packet. Again, I want to stress the point that one of the things that new learning for me was making sure, and I really do appreciate all the patience of my veteran leadership in ALT, because I ask questions, they're like, this isn't our first rodeo, Bill, doing this. But that Pat looked at the data from this year for those estimations for next year. So that's what we're here for your approval next week on our food service agreements for 26-27, already getting ready to roll for next year.
Great. Any questions? President Burton.
Just a comment, I appreciate it, and I just want to let the public know too, that all of these vendors are Michigan companies. So that's nice when we can keep our money inside the state of Michigan and supporting other businesses, so
Absolutely.
it's a good thing.
Anything else on this item? So this will go on,
Next week.
is this regular?
Typically, I believe so.
Okay.
We can put this on consent probably, because it's a year-over-year purchase if we choose to do that. What's the thought of the board?
I wouldn't have any problem on consent. Yes, Mrs. Bradford.
Thank you. Well, it is a big cost item, so I wonder if we want to mention the cost of it so people know how much we spend annually for
That's fine.
food.
I don't, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah,
that's
I'm
fine.
looking at the one price of Van Aerden, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
we better not just put it on consent, maybe we should let them know
That's fine.
the total cost.
Okay,
I can look
so
at
we'll
that.
put it on regular. That's fine. All right, then that takes us to 3D, the land for sale proposal and
Mr.
our.
Johnson, sorry.
Oh,
Real quick question.
one back?
Yes, sorry.
Mrs. Frank.
Thank you. Bill, is there a way that we could, how much is this? I don't expect you to know this tonight, but year over year of an increase is this? And did you say that? Not tonight, you don't need to let us know, but is it reasonable, the increase from what we paid last year, is what I'm wondering.
Nothing stuck out for me, but I would have to look at that more closely.
You're thinking more like the per item, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the
I see.
total amount is different. Is it per item, or is it just that we're buying more or less? It doesn't have to be like a spreadsheet total
Okay.
exactly. I'm just wondering if it's 10% more, about
Yeah.
2.3%, is that what you said?
The CPI. It may make a difference if the per item may be more important than the overall,
Right.
because if you're if we're down where I think we're budgeting for 125 fewer
Less kids.
students, the total may look,
Right, right.
it may look better, but the per may be up, so,
And our number of meals may have changed. Right,
Right.
right. So, yeah, I
Okay.
guess that's
all right.
fine. Or both.
Phil, Bill, whatever.
I mean, that was the easiest part of the transition.
Now we'll go to 3D.
Yes, thank you. So throughout the year, for those that are watching this evening, we've talked a lot about sale of property, various philosophies on that. And this Ann Arbor Trail property was a property that we talked about in study session last week that had come up for sale a few years back. We talked about how in that sale, we had to do a redo because it was something that was, the original buyer backed out of it. We then had another proposal a few years later. And so after, with some of the concerns of this property, with Brownfield's cleanup, we had thought that that property was gonna just stand idle. By direction of the board, we have resumed an agreement with Infinity Homes, and right now, we do not have a final agreement, but we have put forth the concepts that we discussed last week for the sale price, and then after the sale price, over a 10-year period, if it developed for housing, we would have equal the amount, if not to exceed the amount of the original asking price that we went for last year. So that was the concept that we discussed last week in study session. One of the things that came up last week was, what if the Infinity Homes bought this property from us and then turned around and sold to a third party, not in this domain, for example, an office complex or something to that effect. Our legal has put in there in one of the exhibits in the draft that's under review right now, that we would be, that would only be allowed if we receive $225,000. It was too hard to structure a percentage of a future sale off of costs that the buyer had already put into the property, so that was the cleanest way. So it's basically either buy this now for a lower asking price, and the reasons we talked about that, but then when you develop the units, the district gets a percentage of each unit back to the district.
$1 price per unit.
A dollar per, 12,500, I believe it is, per unit. If we don't sell it over 10 years, then basically we get the $50,000 that's in the proposal. If we sell it to, if they sell it to somebody else, we get 225,000 in addition to this 50,000. So it puts us in a stronger position, because that was the one worry, was what if it's not developed? The 10 years, as we've talked about, gives the developer time to look at the property, clean up the property, and develop the property. It's actually better to have a longer window than a shorter window for the district. And it also realistically hits at some of the points that somebody's not gonna come in and buy that property for a big amount initially, with some potential cleanup and some other other items that are needed to develop it. So that's where we are right now. My goal would be to have this finalized sometime this summer, sooner than later, but we wanted to let you know that since last week, we've already engaged in future conversations, and there's a draft now in Infinity Homes court to review with their legal.
Okay. Questions? No? Thanks for all that research on it, Bill, and
Yeah.
thanks for the presentation
Good learning.
last week.
Yep, absolutely.
It was very informative. So at that point, President Burton, that completes Operations Committee.
Thank you. Have a good night.
That's informative, right.
Thank you, Bill. The next item on our agenda is item 4, Division of Instruction Committee, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Bradford.
Thank you, President Burton. We have a number of items this evening, I believe 7. So we're going to get started with Mr. E2, and 4A is the renewal of the MHSAA membership for 2026-27.
Thank
Good
you,
evening.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone. This is our annual renewal membership to the Michigan High School Athletic Association, or the MHSAA. This is an opportunity for us to participate in postseason competitions, playoffs that you see at the state level for our high schools and so on and so forth. Our membership is with the middle schools and the high schools. There is no cost to join the MHSAA from that standpoint, but again, gives us the opportunity to join those postseason playoffs and things of that nature. which is good timing considering our Stevenson Spartan softball team is in the Elite Eight, the quarterfinals tomorrow against Wall Lake Northern, so exciting times for them. But I'm asking for that to be on the consent agenda item if we're able to do that.
All right, is everybody okay with that being on the consent agenda? And does anybody have any questions regarding this item? Okay, we can put that on consent agenda for next week.
Easy.
Thank you, that was easy.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on to item 4B, a van purchase for the Work Skills Program. And Mrs. Sproul, welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It was perfect timing there, huh?
Oh, nice.
I am thrilled tonight to bring forward for your consideration further discussion about the Garfield Work Skills van purchase that we had a lot of conversation about last week at our study session. Yes, maybe, yeah, in the correct order there. So the Garfield Skills Center team identified that they had a need for further transportation options for their students within their school community. And they worked together with a wonderful foundation, the Lowell Rodney Johnson Foundation, who generously offered to donate $50,000 towards this endeavor. $50,000 sounds like a lot. It does not cover the entire purchase price of the van and the maintenance costs. So we as a district have had to do a lot of research to see what added costs are there that go along with that. So this has been a lengthy process. We do not currently own a van that transports students. So in order to make sure that we were doing that, following all of the guidelines and recommendations, making sure that we had the correct insurance coverage, making sure that we were training staff appropriately, and that we had the appropriate sized van, took a lot of research both by Mr. Green, Mr. Francis, Ms. Smith, Superintendent Oquist, and myself. So these conversations have been going on so that when we are ready to do this, we're ready to do it well with safety in mind for our students and also access to the community. So that being said, this is a wonderful opportunity for our students to have more, I'm going to say spontaneous trips, not meaning that we're going to say at the beginning of the day, oh, let's go to Meyer, but things that might be more one-offs. So for example, some of our young adult students might need to go to get their, not their driver's license, but their ID from Secretary of State. So this would allow us the opportunity to work together on some of those transition-related goals for our students. So it just gives us a little bit more flexibility with that. I talked a lot about the compliance that we want to make sure that we are following through on, both from the safety aspects and also the certification required for the drivers. So as a district, we've identified that we don't want to go larger than a 10-passenger vehicle. Once you go beyond 10-passenger, it opens up added requirements for the driver of that vehicle. We have identified that this vehicle will be housed within our Livonia Transportation Department so that they will be able to maintain it properly and ensure that it is kept safely in the appropriate location. So this is something, like I said, that we've been researching for quite a while. We received a quote back on May 14th from Ford about getting a new van retrofitted to that 10-passenger. So we're very excited about that. Now, the additional almost $20,000, we are able to use some funds that we have, discretionary funds from Act 18, so that will not come out of our general fund.
Any questions? Mrs. Burton?
Mrs. Sprout, you said that the $20,000 that's coming out of Act 18 funds, those are funds that we typically get every year. So we recognize that the very generous $50,000 offer toward purchasing this still did not cover all of its costs. So, and if I
That's
remember
correct.
correctly, it was about $18,000 a year that it's going to cost the district in order to take advantage of this generous grant and purchase the van.
So it certainly will take an additional $18,000 to purchase just the van this year.
gas.
Purchase the van,
In
okay.
addition to that, then we'll have maintenance costs, gas, those added expenses, insurance as well as that. So
Okay.
those will be ongoing costs in addition to the one-time $70,000 for the van, just
Okay.
shy of $70,000.
Do we know if then, with those two pieces, the 18,000 and the additional ongoing costs, are those all going to be covered by the money that we received through Act 18? Or do we anticipate general funds also needing to be used for this?
So currently, Act 18, for the past 3 years, has given us some discretionary funding that we can choose to use as we see fit for Act 18 programs. So
Okay.
Garfield is one of those programs that's funded through Western Wayne County because we house that work skills program there. So they give us those added funds. Those are never guaranteed, but
Okay.
they are, have been available for the past 3 years. And that was part of the consideration as we were working through this as well, that that is not a guaranteed source.
Right.
However, transportation costs are something that we can charge to Act 18 as well. So it just means that we have to work very closely with our budget to ensure that we are capturing those costs.
Okay, all right. And you mentioned it also, but I want to just make certain that anyone who was listening to our meeting a few weeks ago, there was a member of the community who was, or of our staff, who was asking about the utilization of this grant. And this has not been sitting idle. This has taken months of time to make certain that we are, as you said, in compliance with the law and recommendations, because this is a new transportation venture that we are going into. I just don't want anyone who is listening to that meeting to think that we weren't doing anything with this. We were doing quite a lot, but it just takes several months to go through all these processes. So
Yes.
thank you very much for spending the time that's necessary to go into this new endeavor, and I hope that it's really positive for our students.
Absolutely, and I just want to say, Miss Smith went out of her way, well, she always does this, so I don't even want to say she went out of her way, but she created a separate account that this fund stayed in, so nothing has been touched pending the board's decision about moving forward with this after all of our research to make sure that it's the right decision and that it's sustainable, because we don't want to spend this kind of money, invest in it, and then have it sitting, not being utilized by students. That would be just a huge misuse of all funds.
Great, thank you.
Mrs. O'Quist.
Thank you, Mrs. Bradford. Mr. Johnson was kind enough to point out, he has an eagle eye, that the file is named 2027 Transit Livonia Public Library. I believe that was just a mistake on our end when this was uploaded, so that should state Transit Livonia Public Schools. And so I will ask Mrs. Junta to change that so that if anyone is looking at this, it does not appear that we're purchasing something for another entity. This is for Livonia Public Schools to be utilized primarily by Garfield Community School, but it will be housed here with the transit vehicles from Livonia Public Schools. So we'll get that updated.
Good
Thank you.
catch. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. Mrs. Sproul, you said that it's a 10-passenger van. That means any certified driver is able to, or this does not require a CDL? Or does it?
It does not require the same level of certification that our bus drivers do, but it does require a chauffeur's license in order to drive this.
Okay,
yes.
so only certain people will be able to
Correct.
drive the vehicle. And you also said it's a 10-passenger, so does that mean 8 or 9 students may ride in it? Or 8 students, really? And then with maybe a driver and an assistant? Or how does that work?
Yeah, my understanding is that it's 10 passengers total, though that includes the driver's seat, passenger seat, and then the seats in the rear.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
So it would include our staff and students, 10 total.
Okay, excellent. And I guess that was it. I think, I hope it is a successful piece of equipment for Garfield and their program, because I could see where something like that may be needed on a daily basis or during the weekday if you need to take a trip somewhere and you're not able to organize it quickly enough through transportation. There would be a vehicle ready for students if they need be.
Yeah.
So I think that's great, so,
Thank you.
yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so will this be going on the regular meeting agenda for approval? Okay.
Please.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Okay. We're gonna keep her again. We're moving on to item 4C, Student Services Technology Purchase, or Act 18.
Yeah, it's a big night
Okay.
for me, 2 in a
Yes,
row,
it is.
huh? So every year we talk about the Act 18 budget, and as you know, those funds come from Wayne County into Livonia Public Schools to support our Act 18 programs. We run programs for students with autism, students with moderate cognitive impairments. We support students with visual impairments across Western Wayne County, and we support students through our work skills program. So as part of that, when we're compiling a budget, we look not just at staffing costs and classroom needs, but we also look at curriculum, technology, and other added costs that are associated. So tonight, I'm bringing to you a proposal to purchase $99,000 worth of technology. This is a large purchase, and I think it's twofold. I think the first part is that we've seen a real increase in some of our technology costs recently, and the second is that we are really trying to replace 1/3 of the device across our Act 18 program each year. So we're looking at replacing 1/3 of our laptop computers, 1/3 of our student Chromebooks, and 1/3 of our iPads for student use during the school day or at home if it's needed. So like I said, it is a larger purchase, but hopefully this will keep us current. We have a lot of wear and tear that happens just normally, as you know, we all use computers and iPads and those kind of things. They don't last forever, so we're looking to replace 1/3 of that. So all of this funding has been pre-approved through our Act 18 budget for the 26-27 school year, and I'm bringing this to you this evening for your approval.
Any questions or comments? I'm glad you have a plan, like the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 sounds like a good, good way to do it, so
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
you always have something new, but in the coffers every year for the
Yes.
kids, so, or for the students, I should say. Any other questions or comments? Okay, this should be put on for the regular meeting. Thank you. All right, our next item up is 4D. We're going to see Mrs. O'Brien for the next four, and item 4D is the purchase of Music First digital platform. Hello, Mrs. O'Brien.
Hello, Mrs. Bradford.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone. I have some purchases for us this evening. Our first one is a digital music platform called Music First. As you know, this year I was focusing on some of the electives areas and asked some of our teacher leaders and CAL's content area leaders during their PLT times to look at the materials that they have and look for updates. Music First is one that several schools have purchased, and as they have met in their district team, said, we think this is something everyone should use. And so the purchase is for a 3-year license for all secondary schools to have access to Music First. The cost would be $44,783.19, and we would be utilizing our secondary textbook budget. And Mr. Van Ham said that he would make a plan during PD days and district teams days to build in a curriculum for each one of our music classes utilizing this platform. So this would be a new purchase for some schools and very comfortable in other schools, so they can help each other as they learn and use this program.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mrs. Bradford. So looking at this, this is for secondary use?
Yes,
And it will be available at all of our secondary schools?
yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Frank.
So the schools that have already purchased it, will they, will the district cover it and then that will be more money back for them? Or if they've already covered it, it's already purchased? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep,
Does
typically
it
schools buy
overlap?
1-year licenses
Okay,
for, they typically don't package them because it costs more. So the music
Yes.
teacher says, I'd like this, and they have a couple $1,000s.
Yes.
When we purchase it for all of our schools, it's larger, and we're doing 3 years. So
Okay.
according to Mr. Van Ham, it didn't seem like there was any overlap
Okay.
whatsoever.
Thank you.
Good
But that was
question.
a great question.
Good question. Any other questions or comments? Okay, see, now we can put that on for the regular meeting, for next week voting meeting. All right, moving on to item 4E, the renewal of creative curriculum materials and licenses. Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you. As you know, we use creative curriculum from teaching strategies at the ECC in our infants, preschool, toddler classrooms, and then we also use it for young fives. When we first got creative curriculum at Jackson Center, we got a 2-year license, and we were a little slow on getting teachers used to using that. So we only did another 2-year renewal 2 years ago, and Dr. Dodge has created a plan on our PD days to have teachers work together and utilize both the platform and the materials. So now we're at the end of that 2 years, and we're looking to just continue with 2 years and really dig into how much they're utilizing some of the resources. We wanted to make sure teachers all had access to a curriculum, but as we know, infant and toddler rooms might not be using it to the same level. The other thing that if you look at that quote, there is $11,000 in professional development on that quote. So Dr. Dodge felt that the Young Fives teachers had these webinars that they've been using on PD days and wanted access to those. So she had asked the rep who then sent me the quote. On Friday, Mrs. Corey said she didn't think this was the right membership for PD. So I've reached out Friday to the rep and today and haven't heard from them. So I wanted to bring it today, but I might not have the right quote to go to a regular board meeting for next week for creative curriculum. So I wanted to be able to talk about it, but I do want to acknowledge that that amount of money, my expectation is that would be much less. According to Mrs. Corey, that is not the right PD membership that we should be getting.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, President Burton.
So everything about this is correct, just that the PD cost is likely to go down.
Correct.
Got it, thank you.
You are welcome.
Mrs. Frank?
You'll still bring it to the meeting. You'll just give us.
You'll bring it to the meeting, you'll just give us
If
the
I
update.
don't have an updated quote, I was going to wait until August.
Okay.
So we'll have talked about it, and I could just bring it to the regular board meeting in August, because if she does not respond to me this week, then we're not going to have a quote with that.
Mr. Johnson?
Might I suggest that we go ahead and put it on the agenda, and in the event you do have it, then we can vote on it next week. If you don't, we can always remove it from the agenda.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Okay.
If we think it's gonna be less, and if we get it in our packet, we will all be aware of the price change.
Yes.
And if that happens to come about, I don't see why we couldn't go ahead with it if everybody else is okay with that.
Yep.
Great.
Mrs.
Thank you. I appreciate
President
that.
Burton.
And then in the case that, excuse me, pardon me, in case it's not ready for next week, we will have other meetings for superintendent
Throughout the
search
summer.
purposes throughout the summer. Please feel free to let me know if we need to schedule a brief special meeting for voting purposes for just this item. We're happy to do that.
Great. Thank you. I very much appreciate that.
I don't want the
Yeah, we don't want it
curriculum
to
to be
be
held
held
up
up.
because we didn't vote for a month and a half on it, so.
Great.
Any other questions or comments? Great, okay, well, hopefully we'll have it on for next week. Moving on to item 4F, the renewal of Authentico instructional licenses.
Yes, so Mr. Miga, our world language content area leader, Authentico was one of our first textbooks that we had gotten when we started doing the Wayne County Enhancement Millage money. And the teachers, so again, one of the really nice things about having professional learning communities, district teams, both district and building teams, is that teachers in a content area are talking all of the time. So to have a conversation, you didn't have to call a separate meeting for them to talk about the resource and say, so should we look at new materials or should we continue with what they had? And so Mr. Miga has had conversation throughout the spring with the Spanish teachers. So next year we'll have some Spanish level 2 and 3 will be up, and French will be up next year. But Spanish 1, we don't have enough digital licenses for students in the fall. And most students, we have the largest groups at level 1 of any of our languages. So this is a 3-year license renewal of the Authentico Level A, which is our Level 1 Spanish. And so this would give access to students for the next 3 years, and the cost is $63,200. We still have the same textbook, so we have a book, a class set for every school, and then the digital licenses for students to have access to.
Okay. Mrs. Frank?
Could have missed this, so I'm sorry if you, so did you say high school and middle school? Right, because Spanish 1 is offered at both?
Any Spanish one. So yes,
So they,
any Spanish one, yes.
and are they still pretty, is our Spanish program pretty rigorous at all three, triads?
Do you mean the number of students
Yes, that are
taking
interested
them?
in Spanish
I
one.
think Spanish is still our most popular
Okay,
language.
Okay.
One thing I would have Mrs. Junta, maybe it's, I think it's Authentico, and in the subject line, it says Authentico. So maybe we could change that on the, I think it's Authentico,
Oh, on the
on the
agenda.
subject line.
I was like, I
On the
think,
agenda.
but on the agenda.
Yeah, on the-
Perfect.
just on the agenda.
Perfect.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Mrs. Burton, President Burton.
Just a thank you again to our community. Just to, again, this is Wayne County enhancement money, which is taxes that our community has agreed to pay, and this is literally your tax dollars at work. These, we use a lot of this money for curriculum, and
We do.
we've been able to keep our curriculum quite nicely updated, and it's very, very appreciated.
Very appreciated by our staff.
Very much so. Thank you for acknowledging that. And that will go on the regular meeting for next week. All right, we've got one more item, 4G, an updated approval of the Labor Day waiver to the start of the school year.
Yes, so we will be, or we already have applied to the state of Michigan to update our early start waiver. So we did that 2 years ago after our, 3 years ago. So it was the end of the first year of our last contract negotiation. We had worked that we would like to begin school before Labor Day. There's a process through the Michigan Department of Education. You fill out a form. Mr. Hillard had done it for us that year. You give them 3 dates that you would be willing to have an open community meeting. It does not have to be attached to a board meeting. It just needs to be at the school district. Michigan Department of Education will call in and listen in. There's a statement to say Livonia Public Schools would like to continue to open school prior to the Labor Day weekend. And you have it posted so that people can come and give their support or their concerns about that. And so we did that 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, and so now we're reapplying for 3 more years. I already applied for it and wanted to share that with you, and tomorrow afternoon is the phone call with Michigan Department of Education and the community meeting at 4 p.m. tomorrow.
Okay. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mrs. Bradford. Mrs. O'Brien, 3 years ago, we would have had to have the same process.
Correct.
Did anybody actually come in?
We had a couple people who had actually cottages in the UP and said by August, it's just starting to get warm in the UP, and we'd like to have more time at our cottages and not come back to school.
Well, I can
And I
just,
think we also had a staff member
Oh,
and
yes.
a student who were advocating for us to start before school, so that we could get out at the time we got out this year, so.
I would
Yeah.
disagree with the statement that it takes August to get hot in the UP. I've been there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Mr. McFarland?
I guess just curious, since this is my first time
Yeah.
dealing with this specific issue, what is the benefit to starting the week prior to the holiday? To a layman, it would feel truncated to come for a short week and then come back for a short week. So is it just for the end of the year, or is there any other supporting?
So there's a couple different benefits. Yes, getting out early in Livonia was one of the latest that got out in the area. Also, a lot of fall sports start in August, so many families are already tied to being home, and Monday through Friday, they have camps and such. And then,
I think even games were starting before the school year too, right?
so games start too in fall football, right?
Yes.
That's the only one, right?
I'm a hockey girl, sorry. And so then, the other really nice piece has been giving teachers that week to get to know kids beginning that routine, give them a long weekend to kind of talk about how the first week of school went and this and that, and then kind of begin to hit the ground running. So then September is a lot more academics than it was before, instead of get to know you and build routines, because we have those couple weeks or week before Labor Day that helps
Get them back.
get them walking in the water instead of just getting going.
And it varies so much as well, that's a great explanation. When Labor Day is as late as September 7th, and we're not starting school till September
Right.
8th, on those years, we were getting out in the June 16th, 17th area, and we really were one of the last ones with the way the rest of our calendar was scheduled. We heard a lot of feedback from families at that time that they wanted us to look at an earlier out, therefore an earlier start. And at least for our high school families, they really are embedded back into the schools by that time for the most part. So overall, I think it has been well received. Some of our students, if you ask them the first week of school if they're ready to be back, they'll say no, but by this time of the year, they're very happy with that schedule. It also helped us to balance out the time before AP tests. So when we were losing that time and not starting until September 8th, it's just fewer days until you get to that point of assessments that are set by the College Board or the state. So when we're on the earlier end, we can get another week or two of school in throughout the school year. And it was able to begin to balance out first and second semester a little bit better. So there were a number of different pieces, but the biggest really was the calendar itself balancing out, but we've found some other benefits along the way.
Awesome, thank you.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Thank you. Touching again on what Mrs. Oquist just said regarding AP exams, the date of AP testing is a nationwide date. Everyone in the country takes them at the same time, and after, which is in May, and after that, the classwork is done. There's nothing for those students, no more learning to do prior to the test. So the rest of the year is kind of a washout in your AP classes. So it behooves us to make that period as short as possible and have the learning up front extended. And it also helps to level us with schools across the country. In the South, they start school considerably earlier, even as early as late July and early August. So they have a distinct advantage when it comes to performing on AP tests and other standardized tests.
Anybody else? President Burton?
Just piggybacking on Mrs. Jarvis's thoughts, our classes still do continue for our AP students.
They do.
And other learning still takes place. It's just not necessarily teach to the test, but it's still AP learning for our curriculum, correct?
Yes, so the goal of an AP class is to pass that test, and then the last couple of weeks, they still have a unit that they do after AP testing.
Okay.
So there's always the expectation that we're going till the end of the year.
Thank you.
Mrs. Frank?
In the 4 years between Logan, my oldest, when he graduated under the old program, there were so many weeks afterwards. And now with Carson graduating this year, the difference in the start of the school year has made an incredible change to just, when they get done, there's not that big lag at the end. And I think that it's made a huge difference for graduations to be a little bit earlier. I mean, I think I've heard so many great comments about this is so helpful. And I think that 4-day start is a really gentle way to get back into the routine and to get started. So I love that we're doing it, and it was a long time coming. So I love that we're doing it.
President Burton?
And we touched on it, but just so folks know, we still have the Friday and the Monday of Labor Day weekend off, correct? So it's a 4-day weekend for families, which means we go to school for 4 days, a 4-day weekend, another school for 4 days, Tuesday through Friday then.
Yes.
And then we're into a 5-day
Yep,
school
we're
week.
required to not have school the Friday of Labor Day.
Yeah,
I
that's
think that's
state law.
I think that's
State law.
great. That's
Okay, so
helpful.
folks who have Labor Day plans, and I know a lot of people do, they're
Yes.
still able to do that
Yep.
from
Go
Thursday.
camping,
Thursday
yep.
evening on.
Yep.
So, okay, thank you.
Mrs. Frank?
This doesn't require any
Nope.
board, you're just letting.
It's information. Yep.
Information only. Okay.
We did initially bring it to the board.
Right.
And then we bring the calendar as part of the contract recommendation, the bargaining agreement we bring to you with our union. So that's where the board would have the vote in that, yeah.
Okay, and that completes the Division of Instruction Committee for this evening. I'll turn it back over to President Burton.
Thank you. And we are now on to item 5, the Finance Committee, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Acosta.
Thank you, President Burton. We have one item this evening, the most important one. No, I'm kidding. With Ms. Smith, delivering the budget update for 2025-2026 and the proposed budget for 2026-2027.
Thank you so much. What's being passed around right now is the budget book. I also have a corresponding slideshow to go with it. So if you would like to be able to follow along, there's copies of this as well, if you'd like that. And if you don't mind, Teresa, thank you so much. And thank you so much to the board. I was realizing as I was preparing to present tonight just how many times that we have met to discuss this. I know the board takes this very seriously, and you can tell by the amount of time that we spend going over the budget, going over budget assumptions, our recommendations. So thank you for that time. So if I do miss anything that's been said, because again, we've had multiple conversations about it, just let me know and help, feel free to stop me so that we can make sure everything's covered for our community. So with that, we'll start with just our budget target. This has been ongoing discussions with our board to say, where are we trying to land? So on the next slide, we'll see the budget target is 15% fund balance. So very happy to report that we're right there for both the 25-26 final budget amendment as well as for the 26-27 budget, that we're going to have an ending fund balance of 15%. And we know at this table why that is so important, but for the benefit of our audience, I want to take a minute to explain why that's so important. That is a target that was originally shared by the Michigan school business officials, whose primary jobs is school finance, it's budgets, it's watching trends, it's looking at history, and they've come up with a recommendation of 15 to 20% is a healthy fund balance, and fund balance is another way of saying a savings account. What that does for a district, it brings first and foremost financial stability. I can speak from my own experience having gone through the pandemic when we saw mid-year cut. We saw a $2 million cut that came to us in June of that school year with no time to respond. We had gone through the school year. That wasn't a cut for the following year. That was an immediate cut of $2 million. So if you don't have a savings, that already uncertain time would have looked a lot differently. So first and foremost, financial stability. The next one is protection against state funding uncertainty. Again, that example of the $2 million that happened mid-year. And I know we've got board members that have been around when it wasn't a $2 million cut. It was a $470 per pupil cut that came from the state. So most of our budget is based on state funding. It really is that per pupil foundation allowance that funds most of our general fund. So when there's adjustments at the state level, they have an immediate impact on us. So a savings account allows us to be thoughtful about how we course correct when we get those changes. It means that we can be thoughtful in how we plan for those adjustments, and we don't have to be reactionary and make immediate, cuts that might have impact on kids. That's always our goal, is to minimize any impact on our kids. Next is the cash flow protection. So I don't think the average Joe would know that we don't get paid every month. We get paid starting in October. And as we just talked about, we're starting school before Labor Day. So I wouldn't want to ask our staff to wait till October to be paid. Can you work for 2 months and we'll pay you in October once we get our first state aid? That's not good. So what the fund balance allows us to do is pay our staff when they come back to work and not have to borrow any money to make those payrolls. So that's very important, and that saves us quite a bit in interest from, again, having to borrow any money. And we haven't had to borrow. I want to say the last time we did was in 2015, so over a decade we have not had to borrow money to make payroll. So that's great news. Next, credit risk considerations. So specifically thinking of our bond, we've been so fortunate to have the community support for 2 bonds, one in 2013 and another one in 2021. And we've been able to share with the community that our credit rating has increased, has been moved up, made more favorable because of the financial practices in this district, because of the fund balance that we have. They view us as a stable investment, and so they've given us a higher rating. And what does that mean? That means we get better interest on the bonds that we sell. So that's great news. And of course, long-term sustainability. you can't continue to spend more than what you bring in, so it's important that we build a good reserve and then we build a budget that's balanced. So that's what a fund balance does for us. So jumping into the next slide, and we'll kind of go tandem. I'm trying to figure out how this will work going between the budget books and the slides, but the next slide is our final budget amendment for the 25-26 school year. And this is just a real snapshot. What the board has before them is a very detailed budget that lists out the different categories of revenue. We have 4 main categories: local revenue, state revenue, federal revenue, and then other financing sources. And then on the expenditure side, we have, gosh, at least a dozen different categories that we track. Of course, within there, and I made note because it's so funny when you look at the budget book and it looks so simple, our revenue lines, our revenue accounts in the general fund, we have 74 revenue accounts. So we really do track everything down to the very little detail. And on the expenditure side, I believe it's about 2,600 lines of expenditures that we track. So all that to say, for the first amendment that the board approved back in December, we were looking at an ending fund balance of $27.8 million, or a 14.7% fund balance. And while we've had a number of line item changes within the revenue and expenditures, we're again looking at an ending fund balance still at 14.7%, which is great news. So with that, I would like to take a minute and kind of walk you through what were some of the big changes that took place between the first amendment and the final amendment. So starting off on the revenue side, I'll start with the local revenue, and if it would be helpful, one of the books in front of you is labeled the final amended general fund and district budgets. So on that second page after the cover sheet is our general fund revenue. On the local side, our local revenue is up $1.9 million. The largest change there is an E-rate reimbursement. And E-rate is a federal reimbursement. It's primarily all of our different technology purchases. So the board approved last school year a network switch upgrade. And honestly, that might have even been 2 years ago. But we incurred the cost in the general fund, the portion that we knew we would get reimbursed from this grant. But the funding reimbursement was lagged, so we just got that last month, May 20th. We got the E-rate reimbursement. So that takes quite a while to get, but it's worth the wait, because that was $880,000 coming to our general fund to offset costs that were incurred in the general fund. The next large adjustment is another great news. The Wayne County Enhancement Millage up an additional $390,000 from where we were in December. So that's fantastic news. And again, that increase is driven by the property tax values across Wayne County that they've gone up. So we're seeing that show up in the Wayne County Enhancement Millage tax levy. Next one of note is a Medicaid fee-for-service reimbursement. So a shout out to our student services staff. We provide services to students that are Medicaid eligible, and if we take the time to record and submit those services, we can get reimbursement for those. So it's quite the process. It's a lot of documentation, but our staff does it, and I'm so grateful. And this year, on top of the normal, I believe we get about a $500,000 reimbursement for those costs. This year's reimbursement is $820,000, so that's an additional $320,000 for that. So as folks are filling out their documentation, know that it matters, that it shows up when we have these additional dollars available now in the general fund. The last local revenue one that I wanted to point out too was a increase of $85,000 for the Wayne Reese's special education reimbursements, and that's a variety of things. One of the items that RESA will reimburse us for is independence paraprofessionals, and I'm not sure how familiar, I know you probably are. So students that are able to be in their classroom but need a little assistance can be assigned a paraprofessional, and we can, I think we're around maybe 60 FTEs this year that we've been approved for. We can, or the RESA will reimburse us for those costs. So that reimbursement is one of the ones I'm referring to. It's also that special ed transportation costs that we've started to get out of the Act 18 fund that the county maintains, and then also reimbursement for special ed program costs. So one of the state reports that we fill out every year is a 4096 report. We all like numbers and the acronym, so SE is just special education, but 4096 report. We track in some of those 2,600 lines that we maintain the costs of providing services for our students with special needs. So we reimburse, or we send that report to the state, and then they'll give us a reimbursement, but it doesn't cover 100% of the costs. So RISA has been able to reimburse us some of those costs out of the Act 18 fund. On the state side, we're up $1.4 million, and going along with the special education conversation, our Section 51 special education reimbursement is up $800,000, and that's a result of the costs that we incurred in the general fund last year. So they've done their reconciliations. That takes place in about February, but they've trued everything up, and that results in additional funding for us. Another one that caught me off guard, which is great news, I was a little irritated to find out, though, through our May state aid report, it was May 20th, that we were getting an additional $475,000 for our transportation reimbursement from the state. And that's one of those new categoricals they just gave. I want to say maybe this is the second or third year that we've received that. And it's a bit of a mystery on how that reimbursement works, and solely for the fact that they have a designated pot of money. So if they've earmarked $80 million to reimburse districts, then they prorate it depending on how much districts have spent. So maybe Livonia Public Schools makes up 1% of the pot, then we get 1% of the money that they've allocated towards this up to our actual cost. And so it's hard to predict because you don't know what the transportation costs are happening, what's happening in other districts, to know exactly how to budget for that. So it's welcome news, but also, again, kind of finding out about it May 20th. So unfortunately, can't plan to use that this year, but of course that's money that will roll forward for next year, which is great.
Question?
Yep.
Allison, is that money that we have to apply for reimbursement for?
That is one of the very few that we do not. That they do it based on, well, I'll say we have to do a little work because we, just like that 4096 special ed program cost report, we have to also submit a special ed transportation report. So that's something that our drivers have to keep logs of how many students ride and whatnot, and we separately track the costs of special ed runs versus general ed runs, and then we submit those costs to the state, and then we get the reimbursement that way. So this one, we've had the special ed reimbursement for transportation has been in place for years, over, I'd say probably decades. But this transportation one is a new one, and I think it's a result of the School Finance Research Collaborative and, really digging into what does it actually cost to educate children, and part of that cost is transporting kids to school. So, yep.
Oh, great. Okay.
But no separate grant application, just the cost report. Another one is our, and there are so many of them, but it's in essence a MIPSERS reimbursement, or to help us with the cost of the retirement system. One of the sections is paid out quarterly, so what was included in the December payment was, I knew what the quarterly payment was for October, so assuming that would be the case for the remainder of the school year, but we saw larger payments in December and March, so I anticipate our final 147A2 categorical payment to be $410,000 more than what was included in the first amended budget. So again, that's kind of a tricky one to be able to figure out because you need to know what the payrolls are across the state to know what our portion of it is, to know how much we're going to get for that. The last one that was significant was Section 29, subsection 6, our enrollment stabilization payment, up $200,000 from last year. So I'll include that in our final budget amendment. And as you'll recall, last year we saw a smaller than normal student decline. I think it was in the neighborhood of maybe 39, something like that. Definitely a low number. This year we're back up to 119. And I want to caveat that because there's so many different things. In the financial world, I am looking at the blended count. So when I look at the state aid report, it's 10% of your previous spring number and 90% of your current fall number. So when I'm looking at, when I say we're down 119, that means like the blended count, we're down 119 from what we're being paid off of last year. So the downside we're down more students than we were the previous year, but the upside is the legislators have put in this categorical funding to help districts that are in declining enrollment to help offset that somewhat. So those are the big expenditure adjustments. I will happily answer any questions, or if no questions, I can move on to the expenditure side of the general fund. Okay, on the general fund, you'll see a large adjustment, and when I say that, I think some of these, like, they can all be considered large. So when I do it, I look at what the percentage changes from one amendment to the next. And the first one that might catch your eye is under instruction, it's added needs. So this category is where we record the costs for added costs of instruction, such as resource room providers. This would also be our elementary sport teachers. Also, voc ed is considered an added need. So that's all captured here. And we are up $1.2 million in that category. And that is because it's a shift of resource room teachers from our IDA grant back to the general fund. So that's not additional staff that was hired. It's just we've utilized all the IDA grant funds, and the staff are then allocated back to the general fund. And that's something that we did. You're going to get the nerdy side of me that I think is pretty innovative. So instead of charging the cost of their salary for the entire school year, for instance, if we've been approved for 40, or I'll say 20 resource room teachers, instead of charging 20 resource room teachers all year long, we'll charge 40 in the fall until we run out of money. So cash flow wise, I can request reimbursement and get that money in our district sooner. But that means then I'm charging, 40 teachers to the grant, and then eventually I've got to put staff back to the general fund. Yeah, so it was something that I don't think other districts do, but I ran it by our ISD who oversees the IDA grant, and they said that's absolutely fine. So that works out for us. So another expenditure line item I wanted to point out to you is the operations and maintenance, which is up $1 million. And this is something we did touch on during our March update. Something that had caught my eye was our utility costs. They were up from the prior year, and I am asking for an additional $600,000 in the utility line items to cover that. I had, for last year, what we actually incurred for utilities was $2.9 million. I budgeted for a 3.5% increase, so right about $3 million. But we're sitting at, or on track to spend about $3.6 million for utilities. And there were some weather events that, impacted the availability of the natural gas, and so we saw a spike in natural gas costs. That thankfully has come back down, but overall, though, we've seen an increase in our utility costs from the prior year. So.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Ms.
Can
Bradford?
that be also air conditioning with the new units and everything? Maybe that has shifted our,
Absolutely.
yes, it's
Yep.
gone up depending on the weather.
Especially the
whether we have to-
electricity. And that line item, that includes both electricity and the natural gas, so.
Okay,
yeah.
so it could be due to that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And along those lines, speaking of that, again, $1 million up in operations, $600,000 related to utilities, and then we also saw an increase in some of the repair costs. So that's something that we've budgeted for. A couple other ones of note, athletics is up roughly $350,000. And part of that is this year we had just some unique equipment replacements that we needed to take care of. I know the first one did come to the board. It was bleachers at Stevenson. Hopefully that rings a bell. Does that ring a bell? Mm-hmm. We also had to do a few of these didn't rise to the level of needing board approval, but things like the volleyball equipment at Frost was no longer operational, so we had to replace that. We bought some new backstroke start devices for the high school pools, something that was being utilized by other districts, but we hadn't purchased yet, so we purchased that. And one of the last ones is transportation within athletics. I think every school district is struggling for transportation staffing, so we, whenever we can, we do the trips to the games with our own drivers, but at times we need to contract out for transportation, and so we had an increase in the use of the contracted transportation for athletics. So we have a meeting with athletic directors scheduled for Wednesday, so we'll dive into that and kind of review kind of what the expectations are and what the district will provide, and, you know, what can be expected for families to provide, so.
Along those lines, Allison, for transportation, I know there was a question, now that we are offering swim at the middle schools, will there be transportation from the middle schools to the high schools for?
I have to say, it's not something that we have covered. What has been included in our proposed budget is a cost of the, like stipends for the coaches and things like that. We haven't budgeted for transportation costs from the middle school to the high school, but again, we do have a meeting on Wednesday, so we could definitely update the board after that meeting.
Thank you. Mrs. Frank?
But it's sounding like that's not on the, not on the,
It is not something we budgeted for, it's not something we've asked transportation to do. So that would be part of what folks were signing on for, if we
Okay.
were going to do that, yeah.
I just saw that question floating somewhere, so figured
Yeah.
I'd ask. Thank you. Mrs. Frank?
Yes, so, do we have a district policy on athletics? Like when you're at a game or a Saturday meet that's several hours long or whatever, there are some districts that have the team bus sit there. Some buses drop them off but don't take them home. Is it sport by sport dependent? Is it school by school dependent?
I'm looking over to Mr. Etu, who I know definitely knows this more than me. My base level of knowledge is, I know the one-way transportation to events, but again, if it's a certain distance away, I'm not sure, so I will look over. It looks like if it is a certain distance away, the bus will stay on the premises and will transport kids back to their home school.
Distance is a factor, as is availability of transportation drivers and so on and so forth, so we take all that into account.
So in different sports? Different sports. So it's not district policy, it's
Hang on.
dependent? Is that basically what it is?
We do not have a strict policy
Yeah.
on this many miles, this much time, et cetera. But it is something we do need to be aware of, and the costs do continue to rise. So while I know that that's a convenience for families and something we like to be able to do, we've talked to you about the increased cost for athletics and what we're spending out of the general fund. So it is going to be something we're looking at very, very closely.
Because, thanks, in the 4 years too, since we've done it, it used to be that they just dropped off, but now there are buses that are waiting and taking kids home, and kids are riding home on a bus, but I didn't know if that's something that we're doing, or it really is dependent, because it used to be that they only ever went one way, and now there's some more that they're waiting and coming back at the end of the night.
I'd have to look at the frequency in which that's occurring nowadays. It just depends on the location,
Yeah.
if the athletic director requests it, the availability of the drivers, so on and so forth, so.
Okay.
And we do keep, in fact, we just got that from the transportation department. They keep a log of all the trips by high school, what the sport is, the date, and then how many hours the driver was paid for. So we could definitely look into that.
Meeting them on Wednesday.
Yep.
I need the steps.
And last one that I'll point out, but of course happy to answer any questions on the general fund expenditures, was community services is up from 3 million to 3.6 million. And that's some additional staffing that has been in place at the Early Childhood Center. So community services, that's primarily Early Childhood Center, that would be the child care, and that would also be SAC, so our after-school child care. Both of those are considered community services from the state lens. So in looking at that, just the number of hours and the staff present has increased, so I wanted to capture that in our final budget amendment. So, and all that to say, a lot of changes on the expenditure side, a lot of changes on the revenue side, but happy to report that we're still right at that window of 15% ending fund balance.
Thank you. President Burton?
And Mrs. Smith, the board has to approve expenditures if they go over X number of dollars, but if they're under that, that's rolled in with the budget, and then we see it at this point when it's all in aggregate.
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
And right now, that threshold is 31,000, and our administrative procedure is based on the threshold set by the state. So we bring that updated administrative procedure generally every October to the board for your consideration. And it's generally similar to like a CPI increase each year. So we're sitting right around 31,000. Is any purchase over 31,000 needs to come to the board for approval.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then As far as things that are unexpected, like you said, utility bills that due to a very harsh couple of months in the middle of winter, for example, do we capture that just at the quarterly amendment? Because we can't obviously approve that in the middle of a snowstorm, or,
Yes,
the
yes.
week after a snowstorm.
So
that
I
our
went
gas
back
bill
to
went
my
up.
notes from March, and that was definitely something we discussed in March, but nothing that got formally approved by the board in March. So, but as you know, it's always about getting your approval ahead of time. So having that conversation in March, if you said, we still need maintenance and operations to stay at 20.5 million, then we as a team would go back and say, okay, then we need to pull back on, what areas can we pull back on? So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, no, they're not. And for the record, classrooms are not going to be cold.
Yes.
We would take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
But I know, and I know the board knows that too, but it always feels a little funny doing a budget amendment in June because we're like come to the end of the year. But it truly is, obviously the board's prerogative to say, no, I'm not, if you're not comfortable with something, then it's our charge then to go back and make it work. So, and we will always do that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions?
What I'm going to propose is maybe moving on back to our slideshow and sticking with the general fund, and then we'll save the other funds for the end. So we just went over the final budget amendment, and next up, we'll switch gears and look at the 26-27 school year. So generally, this is hot off the presses. We save it for the public hearing next week, but I thought inquiring minds might want to know, what does it look like for next year? So these are our proposed property tax millage rates. Again, that'll be presented at the public hearing, and ultimately what I would be recommending for the board to adopt as part of our budget resolution next week. So I'm happy to show our operating millage is going to continue to be 18 mills. I know you know this, but I will say it for anybody in the audience. That is something that we are required by law to levy. So when we talk about the foundation allowance that we get this year, it's $10,050 per student. The state doesn't actually give us $10,050 per student. They back off what would be the equivalent of 18 mills that we should be collecting here locally. So that 18 mills for us is about $30 million. So I want to say maybe what the state is actually paying us is, I'll make it up, in the neighborhood of $5,000 per pupil, and that other $5,000 is made up by this operating millage. So if anybody was thinking that's too much, we should not renew that, which it is a 10-year renewal. So this one is in place through 2029. That funding would just put us at a disadvantage from any other district in the state, and that is not something that the state would make up. So that's very imperative that districts levy that full 18 mills locally.
President Burton.
And that is only on non-homestead.
Correct.
That's only on businesses in our community or second
Or rental
homes or
properties,
something.
correct.
Exactly. This is
So
not
not
on
primary,
homeowners.
yes, not on primary residences.
Just want to make that clear.
Yep. The next one is our debt millage. So this would be when we do go to the community and we get support for a bond. We sell the bonds and then we have debt that we need to pay back. The mills levied last year was 4.1 mills, and that'll be 4.1 mills again this school year, so no change there. And then the last millage type that we levy is a sinking fund. This one is a slight decrease from last year, and that's due to a Headley rollback requirement. So the general rule is they look at how much your property tax values have gone up, and if they've gone up, I'll say more than what's allowed, they make you roll back your what you levy. So that was a small rollback, so from 1.5664 to 1.5568 mils. So what we'll look at now for our proposed budget would assume that these would be the rates approved by the board next week. Moving on, the next slide are budget assumptions for 26-27. And again, these have been reviewed with the board, but for our community, I'd love to run through them. We are estimating a $250 per pupil foundation allowance increase. We do not yet have a budget from the state, but we have seen budget proposals from the governor, the Senate, and the House, and all included a $250 per pupil increase. So that has been included in there. That percentage-wise is roughly about 2.5% increase. I'm also recommending that we go with the 125 student enrollment decline. That does feel like we're being conservative. We've had, fluctuations over the years from, COVID. We saw a rather large drop, and we've seen a rather small drop 2 years ago, and then we were at about 119 again this year. So 125 feels like it's a good, safe number to go with. And of course, once we get our actual count, we'll adjust that in the December budget amendment. Next up, an overall increase in categorical funding from the state of about $1 million. So there's a lot of things in the hopper from the state. Each branch kind of has their own things that are of interest to them. One thing that we're very hopeful for is a change in language to the Section 31AA funding. That was funding for schools for mental health and school safety, something that we were able to receive, 2 years ago that we were not able to receive this year. And that was because they were making school districts sign a waiver, in essence waiving privilege, attorney-client privilege, and given circumstances, and a large number of districts across the state just were not comfortable with that. And I want to say it was in the neighborhood of about 70%, 75% of districts across the state turned that money down. So we saw in the Senate's proposal a change in language, and if that change goes through, that would be something we would feel comfortable accepting those funds this next school year. So we're hopeful that goes through. The other item of note is an increase for enhancement millage. So again, enhancement millage is levied across all of Wayne County. It's collected by Wayne RESA, and then it's distributed, or I should say it's collected by Wayne County. It's given to Wayne RESA, and then Wayne RESA distributes it out to the local districts. And we're seeing our property tax values across Wayne County going up, so we can anticipate some additional enhancement millage funds. And then an increase in athletic funding of about $150,000. As we know, what we collect from our families doesn't in any way cover our costs in the general fund. We're at about $3 million out of the general fund for athletics. But what we are proposing, we looked at what we were paying, or charging, for pay to participate fees, and we found that we are on the lower end compared to our surrounding districts. And so we are suggesting an increase for this coming school year. And we also looked at the ticket prices, the ticket price going from $6 to $7. And again, we were one of the holdout districts staying at $6, but from what we're experiencing as far as cost increase for athletics, it makes sense for us to come in line with the other districts and do the $7 ticket price. The family passes that we encourage families to pay or purchase is staying the same, so we're not increasing the cost for the family passes. The next slide, I'll go over a couple of the budget adjustments, and these are things that we'll include in our budget every year that we can plan for. The first is salary step increases, so we are very fortunate to have 3-year collective bargaining agreements in place, so I can budget for what our step increases are going to be for all of our employees for the coming year. I'm also budgeting for some retirement savings, and what that means is we've got a number of staff that are retiring that in general, when we fill their positions, are filling them with people that are towards the earlier end of the salary schedule, and so we see some savings from that. I'm also including a 3% hard cap health insurance increase, and we did spend quite a bit of time talking about this one for our community. This one is a bit of an unknown, but this feels like a good route to go right now. There is some legislation out there. It's in the courts, and it sounds like it is going to the governor, but we don't know what the governor will do. But it changes the amount that, it would change the amount that districts can pay towards employees' health insurance costs. So while that's a wonderful welcome relief for employees, that's over $1 million additional cost to school districts without a specific funding line to help us pay for that. So we're not sure where that's going to go, but of course we're keeping our ears open, and we'll update the board as we hear more about that. Also, as part of the proposed budget is backing out one-time expenditures that were incurred in the general fund this past year. And then lastly, other various adjustments. And again, we've spent quite a bit of time, at least the last 2 study sessions, spending quite a bit of time looking at what adjustments administration is recommending to the board so that we can hit our 15% target. So with that, on the next slide, I believe we'll see what the proposed budget is. So as has become our practice, I'm anticipating, or I guess what the board is going to be voting on, is an ending fund balance for this school year of $28.1 million, or 14.7%. We do recognize, though, our ending fund balance generally does come in more favorably than what the final budget amendment shows. And that's because by law, we can't spend a penny more than what the board has authorized. So if I were to not put any, cushion in there for things that might come up, maybe, there could be a lot of things, a repair that needs to take place, we would be in a position where we would be out of compliance with the law, that we can't spend more than what the board's authorized us to spend, so we always put a little bit of a cushion in there. So I've accounted for us coming in more favorably by $1 million from this budget amendment to the actual. So for the proposed budget, we would start with $29.1 million. I'm anticipating revenue of $191.8 million, expenditures of $192.1 million, and an ending fund balance of $28.8 million, or about 15%. Any questions on that? And if not,
Mrs.
of
Jarvis?
course, yep.
Mrs. Smith, would you please review, especially for those who are listening, the difference between the ending fund balance from last year and the beginning fund balance this year?
Absolutely, because that could definitely look like a typo for anybody that's looking at that. So we do recognize that our budget accounts for unknown factors that might come up. We might have to do a repair that wasn't planned. I could go on. There's tons of things that could pop up between now and June 30th. So we're always going to build in that cushion into the budget, and we've tracked it over the years, and we generally do come in more favorably by at least $1 million, meaning revenues will come in a little bit higher than what I've put in the budget, or our expenditures will come in a bit lower than what we've been authorized to spend. And so we want to capture that. We want to be realistic with how much money the district actually has available to spend next year. So we're building in that $1 million, favorable variance into the beginning fund balance for next year. So that's why the ending fund balance doesn't match the beginning fund balance for the 26-27 school year. So, yep.
President Burton.
And we've talked many times about responsibilities of the superintendent, and we're certainly looking at that at this time, when we're looking at the hiring process of a new superintendent. But when you look at some of the very significant pieces of that budget that are the responsibility of the superintendent to be able to advocate on behalf of the district effectively, our foundation allowance, the categoricals, which are huge, that's the devil's in the details kind of thing. They can give you a great increase in your foundation allowance, but if they take it all away in categoricals, that's a net zero, or sometimes it can be a loss. And the hard cap, these are things that I'm so appreciative to Superintendent Opus that you have been such a phenomenal advocate on behalf of public education students throughout the state of Michigan, because you don't just advocate for only Livonia Public Schools students. These are statewide issues, but they're enormously important. Which is why that job is so difficult. It's not just being an expert in education and in running this business of education, but also having to advocate constantly to get the appropriate funding that we need. We just seem to get off of one year, we've got a few months of a reprieve, and we're right back at it again for advocating for the next upcoming budget. So thank you for doing a phenomenal job at that, and for the benefit of those who are listening at home, that is a significant chunk of the superintendent's job, is to stay abreast of these things and let cabinet, board, and sometimes as far as staff and parents know when it's time to significantly advocate to our legislators to make sure that we get what we really need for our students to be able to educate them properly. So thank you for the job that you've consistently done on that, on our behalf.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Now with your permission, we can put up the last slide of the presentation. This is to capture what we're just about to run through. So in addition to our general fund, which is our main fund, we have a lot of other funds where we track our revenue and expenditures. So we'll now run through that. I'm going to propose that we go through that next book, the proposed general fund and district budgets, because that lists both the final amendment and the proposed budget. And so I can make, draw your attention to some things from both the final amendment and the proposed budget going through that book. Of course, if you guys have any questions as you're reviewing these books, though, please feel free to reach out, and happy to answer any questions. The first two I'm going to gloss over. It's our general fund revenue and our general fund expenditures, just because we've gone through that on those slides, what the budget assumptions were. So I will move on to the next sheet, which is our funded projects fund. And So our funded projects fund is all the grants that we receive here in the district. So we break those out between local, state, and federal grants. A couple neat ones, I'll say, this year, but that you'll see are falling off for next year. I'm drawing your attention to the state sources, the 27L2 educator compensation. So that was something included in the budget this past year to do staff bonuses. So that was something that was distributed to staff in January, but we don't have any indication at this point that that'll be included in next year's budget. So you won't see that there. I will point out too, please don't read anything into the first line under local sources is LPS Education Foundation. We have been so very fortunate to get grants from the foundation for the last number of years. It's simply a zero because those awards haven't come yet. So we're, I know I just saw an email go out about, the applications starting to be collected. So that is not to say that those won't be taking place this year or that we won't get funding, but at this point, we don't know what the funding will be. So we're putting that as a zero. A couple other things, I know the board will be made aware of this one because this is definitely going to be something that we come to you with. The third from the bottom under state sources is section 99, the Thrive track. So we were very lucky to submit a proposal to the state for their consideration to put in a track at Garfield for our 18 to 26-year-olds, meant as a way, to get more active, healthy. So it's going to be a track that's going to go in. There's also going to be some activity stations, like thinking of like the Rotary where you see the workout stations, things that are going to be appropriate for our students that are 18 to 26-year-olds and kind of what their abilities are. So we received $750,000 from the state to do that. We anticipate spending roughly $50,000 before June 30th with some of the initial things like taking surveys and whatnot. But really the bulk of that purchase is going to take place next school year. So we'll be bringing those purchases to the board for your hopeful approval.
President Burton.
Is that track going to be open to the Garfield neighborhood community also?
Yes, I don't believe we talked about putting a fence around it. So that would definitely be open and available to the community.
That'd be terrific.
Yep.
Thank you.
We're excited too. It looks like we'll have some funds to maybe resurface the basketball courts over there. So the track will be right by the basketball courts. And I understand the basketball courts are very popular with the students. So we're excited to be able to make that change too. Yeah. And then going in, a couple, you'll see between the final amendment and the proposed, a couple federal grants falling off. We had received a cybersecurity grant, the Filter First grant, that water hydration stations. Can't say that. I'll be sad to see that one go, but we do believe those funds will all be spent by June 30th. So, and not too much else. Title I, we're seeing just a bit of a drop there, or anticipating a bit of a drop. And other than that, not too much on the grant side. But again, if any of them catch your eye and you'd like more information, please feel free to reach out. The Special Education Fund on the next page, not too much happening here. Just an update. We do have the proposed budget. It has been approved by RISA. That one is a ton of work by our student services staff. Megan and her coordinators have to gather a lot of data to submit to RISA, and it's quite the process to get those things approved. But we're, again, very happy to operate the countywide programs that we do here. Moving on to the debt retirement fund. One item I did want to draw your attention to from the final amendment is listed under other, under expenditures. So this was, and it feels like ages ago, but it was just this school year that we did a refunding. So we we issued new bonds to pay off old bonds, which resulted in interest savings for the taxpayers. And what we did was we used some of the cash we had on hand. So some of our fund balance we put towards those new bonds. So that's the $2 million that you see listed under other expenditures. And that's why in the proposed budget it's going back down to $50,000. Generally, the other expenditures is like taxes written off. We also pay a fee. I'm trying to think what their title is called. Argent. I can say what it is, but like an administration fee for the bonds. And we've listed in there. We do know what our bond and or the principal payments and what the interest will be. So that's been updated for the 26-27 school year. Moving on to the next page. I will point out, you'll see it in the final amendment, is the 2023 bond is gone. It's been fully expended. We've had our audit by Yo and Yo that has given their blessing that we've used those funds appropriately. So that letter has been sent off to the Treasury, so we're in compliance there, but we'll no longer need our 2023 bond for the next school year. So we just have the one bond now, the 2025 bond. And again, that was what the community authorized back in 2021. We didn't need all the money in year one, so we sold it in series, 3 series this time, and that final series was sold in 2025, which is why we refer to it as the 2025 bond. I'll make note on here, anticipating we'll have maybe roughly just under $12 million of ending fund balance, so that's what we'll start next year off with. But I do, I'm crossing my fingers that will be fully expended next school year. That might be a little hopeful, because I know we've got some projects lingering. This summer will be the last of our, construction, but we also have a couple technology line items that might not be fully completed by June 30th. But at this point, I'll cross my fingers that it is going to be wrapped up. I wanted to make note the interest income for the bond. You'll see it going from 1.3 down to 480,000. That's simply because the balance is going down, and when you have a smaller balance, you're earning less interest. But we still are garnering about 3.5% for interest on our savings, so pretty good. And again, with all of it being liquid, it's not tied up, so we have access to it immediately if we need it. Moving on, we've got our sinking fund. Not too much of note on the sinking fund. We've updated for the proposed budget the beginning fund balance. On track to spend about $10 million. We do have the local revenue, so that's the tax levy coming in a bit higher because we saw the property tax values going up, so that's great news. Capital Projects Fund, this is a fund that we established to record one-time revenues when we do have miscellaneous sales of capital assets such as property. So we have a board policy in place now that says if the fund balance is under the MSBO recommended range, that revenue goes to the general fund. And if it's over that amount, that it goes into our capital projects fund. So this year for the final amendment, we've had the sale of the Hicks property and the Joy property and some miscellaneous assets reflected here for a total cost or revenue of $405,000. Next year, because we don't have any properties, I'll say in their final stage or set to be sold, I've backed that down to $100,000. So this could be the sale of maybe some of our older school buses that might be being replaced. That might be sold. If there's excess inventory anywhere, we generally put that up for auction and generally can get some funds for that. So that's what I've included in the capital projects proposed budget, along with $1 million of expenditures just as a placeholder. But generally, if there was going to be a project funded out of here, that would be coming to the board for your approval first.
President Byrne.
With the, you mentioned a moment ago, whether or not these funds, for example, sale of property, would go into the general fund or the capital projects fund. I'm pretty sure I remember the policy being that if we're under 15%, it may go into the general fund.
Thank
Am
you.
I remembering
Yes.
correctly?
Yes.
You are.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then if that's the case, the board would have to vote to have that go into the general fund instead of the capital projects fund,
Yeah.
right?
I think you can generally direct us. I don't know that you need an actual vote on that. But
Okay.
the policy does say that you can determine where you would like it to go if it's below 15%.
If we're below,
It
right.
won't automatically go into the general fund, and it won't automatically go into
Okay.
capital projects. So the board can direct us where that would go.
Okay,
Yep.
so anything, since we are at 15%, anything sold now would go into the capital projects fund?
Right,
Okay,
right.
yeah,
Yes.
okay. All right.
And we always have the ability to, then if we needed to move it from there with a vote of the board, either at an off time or certainly at our December budget amendment, the board could direct us to do that as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Moving on to the Food Service Fund and Health and Welfare Fund on the next page. Not too much of note for the Food Service Fund. I will note, I'm sorry, I mistype on my budget book for Health and Welfare Fund. That first column says first amended, that should read final amended, so that'll be fixed for the budget book that goes in your packet. It always gets you when you spend so much time looking at something and then you miss it. It's like, oh, man.
I am just going to pause here for a moment because you did talk about the issue before the state right now with regard to our health costs. And again, well, Mrs. Smith certainly identified that any reprieve for our staff would be a welcome reprieve because healthcare costs have grown so considerably. As you can see, the district expends, will next year, $25 million already at this point in time toward the costs of employee healthcare insurance. And we are pleased to be able to offer what we do for our staff. We know that certainly is one of the benefits in a public sector work compared to a private sector work, that we are able to provide that. But if you think about adding on additional costs for that, let's say they, remove the hard cap, or they increase the hard cap amount, or they made that hard cap amount a bargained item that can be increased or without limit, we really do have to take into account what we're currently spending. So I just want us to take note of that on the board book, because as you can see, this is a fund where we generally keep what we need for unexpected costs that may go above and beyond that. But it's not as though we're sitting with a fund balance in there of $2 million. We have about $300,000, which is a very responsible fund balance for the Health and Welfare Fund. But we, perhaps in years past, maybe when we were self-insured and even for a period of time after that, used to keep up to $2 million in that fund balance. But since we've had the hard cap in place, we generally don't anticipate large differences in expenditures. So this would certainly be something where we would have to come back and amend the budget and amend our expenditures if we wanted to maintain our fund balance, or we would be looking at a significant drop in our fund balance. So I just want to make sure that we always balance that out. Again, I can see where that would be welcome news in the state for employees. However, if the state chooses to do that and the governor signs it without giving us commensurate dollars,
Exactly.
that's untenable.
Right.
It's not going to work for us, and it's not going to work for any school district.
No.
So that is the message we're continuing to give on this.
Yep. We're getting there. Last page. On our last page, it reflects our scholarship fund and our school activities fund. So the scholarship fund is not something funded by the school district. These are donations that we've received. And again, track in separate accounts and then give out to our graduating seniors. And there's different criteria set for how those scholarships are awarded. So generally, we've been maintaining about $40,000 there in savings, and generally collect about $10,000 a year and give out about $10,000 in scholarships. The last one is our school activities funds. So these are maintained at every single one of our buildings. Nobody has a separate bank account anymore. They all run through our office, so every single deposit should be deposited into, through our office, and then every expenditure goes through our office too and is reviewed and approved. So this, our schools, which is such a big number, isn't it? $3 million across all of our buildings is the estimated revenue that the schools will be collecting this year, and they generally will be spending about that $300,000, but they do keep a savings of about $1.8 million there. So I, of course, will open it up. Before I forget, I did want to mention, of course, I mentioned I need to update that header on the Health and Welfare Fund. The other item of note is just letting you know, between now and Wednesday, we had another payroll hit. I know our grant accountant just got direction about moving something between, I think, support services and instruction. If there's any more information that I get so that I can give you the most accurate budget possible, I will include that in the book so that you get the most accurate information to vote on next week. So don't anticipate any significant changes. Of course, if there are, I will, be communicating that out to you, but there might be a little bit, if you see a little change. I know the one that sticks out is the grant accountant. Kind of funny. She budgeted for something somewhere, and then they told her to put it somewhere else, and then a couple months later, i.e. like this week, they told her to put it back to the original place. So she's like, no, my budget's wrong. I'm like, we can change that. We will get that updated. So
It's fixable.
I'd also just like to thank, everybody in my office that has helped make sure that we are on track, that we're capturing all our costs, that we're getting things posted. Stacy Sofer, our finance manager, is definitely an invaluable partner to me, and our accountants and bookkeepers are just such a great resource. So that is our budget for the final amendment and for the proposed. And again, happy to answer any questions if you have any, or if anything comes to mind over the next week, you're welcome to reach out.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you
as
so much.
usual.
Thank you.
That concludes the Finance Committee report.
Thank you. We are on to board policy. Mrs. Frank?
We don't have anything today.
All righty. Human Resources, Mr. McFarland.
There are no items on the agenda for human resources.
All righty. And Legislative, Mrs. Jarvis.
There are no items on the Legislative Committee agenda today.
Terrific. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you so much, folks, for listening in. For those of you who have joined us, we wish you a nice evening, and we will see you next week. Thank you. We are adjourned.